whose tenure has been marked by significant reforms and initiatives in the power sector. As one of the most critical sectors for economic growth and development, the policies were aimed at addressing long-standing challenges such as inadequate power supply and inefficiencies within a focus on improving accessibility, reliability, and sustainability. Well, let's get talking now, being joined live from our Abuja studios by the founder and chief executive officer of ZKJ Energy Partners, Mr. Rumundaka Wunodi. Mr. Wunodi has over 25 years' experience in infrastructure energy markets and power development. He was the pioneer MD CEO of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, NBET. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. I lost you for a bit there, but it's okay. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, then. Now, let's start with the entire electricity market, an overview of what's been happening from the generation end to the transmission end and finally to the distribution end. Everyone seems to have one issue or the other. Now, what really do you think? I think we should start this conversation this way. It's been happening around that value chain. Where are we? Where are we supposed to be?
Well, I mean, you can just put it in a nutshell. We've been on less than 4,000 megawatts for the past decade, right? So in the last 1 year, or within the last 1 month, I think the minister announced that we hit 5,000 megawatts. And currently today we're doing about 3,800 or thereabout. So I think that summarizes what is going on in the sector. The little or the big issues about gas availability, payment, stranded generation, inadequacy of the transmission are all stories that we've heard in the past, or even grid collapse. So you would say that the problems have been just static, and if there's anything there, they keep growing.
Privatization was supposed to help address some of these challenges over 10 years ago now, but we are still hovering between 3,000 and 4,000 megawatts for a country of more than 200 million people.
Yes, and so you wanted to kind of look at what's going on at the higher level, policy regulations in the sector. I've always held the opinion that leadership has always been the biggest challenge for the sector, right? So the president in June last year signed the new Electricity Act 2023, right? There are a few of us who thought that it could have waited after the constitutional amendment. There should have been some policy around that, discussions between the federal and the subnationals, and then based on the outcome, you will put that into a law. But the act is there, and it's thrown quite some challenges and uncertainties within the industry. So what you would expect at the very first thing would be for the government to begin to find a way to implement and take advantage of the constitutional amendment, the new Electricity Act, talking with the subnationals, the states, on how the implementation or how the new regulatory landscape would look like, giving investors an idea of what to expect, giving consumers an idea of what to expect. But we do not have that at this moment. Instead, what you have is in a situation where the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission has taken the lead, and it's quite a commendable thing that NERC is taking the lead, trying to fashion a way that it will give up its authority or cede it to the states when they decide to put together their regulatory commissions. That should be what the federal government, led by the ministry, should be focusing on. It should be able to focus on trying to remove that that legal risk that is hanging. You know, whenever you make a law, people have to understand it. So you talked about privatization. We just got to the point where some of the discos are facing insolvency, the banks are taking them over, and we're trying to work on how to get new investors into those assets, into those businesses, so that they can work and begin to turn the assets around, and then the new law comes in. So people are wondering, if I invest in a disco today, when we set up a holdco and we begin to set up subsidiary distribution companies, how is it going to work? I think that's where the leadership should be focusing on, in parallel with trying to make some investment in transmission, so that really we can get out of these 4,000, 5,000 and begin to generate more power. And to just mind you that when we set up all these state electricity regulatory commission, we can't continue to pay for those commissions and regulatory bodies with 3,400. It means that there is more money going into administration than actually serving the market. So you can see why it's important to grow the generation, grow the supply, but also to actually level the playing field, removing the uncertainties around legal backgrounds.
Now, before NERC instituted this new rates, talking about Band A and all of that we have about 300% increase, with the argument of cost-reflective tariff has also been on the front burner. In your understanding of the sector, what did you think about electricity pricing before now in Nigeria?
Well, the electricity pricing has been, look, again, the electricity pricing might not have been cost-reflective, right? But I think that we've over-focused on the cost, the price, without focusing on the quantity, because invariably, the tariff for a distribution company is based on revenue requirement, right? And it's a quantity times price thing to meet that revenue that would pay for upstream and pay for even the disco services on its own, right? Until we grow the quantity, the price would always be very high and challenging. You know, we're paying for the whole system cost based on 3,500 that get megawatt hours that get to homes, of which about 2,000 or 1,000 of that is not even paid for, right? So there will always be challenge with the pricing. I know it's not cost reflective, but at the same time, it's actually not service reflective either, right? It's not providing people services. So you have to balance the cost with the service. And that's what most people are struggling with. So we have the issue where we have the Band A that is started at 225 naira per kilowatt hour and now down to about 205 or thereabout. And people are paying this and they're not seeing the 20 hours of service as promised, right? So that makes it challenging. The service does not match the cost. And you can only do that when you have more power. So people like us are rooting for, you know, the minister, if he says that we will get to 5,000, 6,000, we want to see the investment in transmission and then commitments to the gas supplier so that we get gas to fire the power plants.
Now, I would also ask you this question. Are we deliberate about taking advantage of other sources? Clearly, the greed cannot...
We don't seem to be. Go ahead.
Yes, clearly it seems like the greed cannot take charge of the supply that is needed. So what do you make of that? Are we deliberate? What have we done? What are we supposed to do better?
I think that in terms of policies and what we want to do, we seem to have it right? We want to transfer some of these regulatory authorities and responsibilities to the states. That should be done. They should regulate distribution, in my mind. We want to grow the transmission, and we had the president superintend the re-endorsement of the federal government, the Presidential Power Initiative that the FGN Power Company is driving. So last year in Dubai, there was re-endorsement of that contract to grow transmission. So that's very good. But where we have a problem, it's implementing, right? So we're deliberate, we think about things, but we struggle with implementation. Even the Band A, we still have a little bit of issues with discourse, how to make that work. So, so are we deliberate? We think well, but we have a problem with following through and implementing what we've conceived.
Another big one. Go ahead, please, make your point.
No, you were talking about transmission, and I also wanted to say that, you know, our transmission system, not only is it inadequate for the generation that we seem to have installed, it is antiquated for the technologies that's coming into that we could take advantage of, right? So solar generation prices are coming down, and many countries are latching onto that to boost their generation and diversify their generation mix. Today, even if we construct a 10 megawatt power plant, 100 megawatt solar power plant, we are not quite sure that we have the modern transmission system that could actually offtake that and distribute it and synchronize it with our grid. So that's another area that we need to focus on.
Brilliant. Now, metering has also been one very big one. Of course, estimated billings before now, we know what's been happening all around it. So, and government, there's been different schemes, the MAP scheme, the other schemes. I know you know what I'm talking about. So, what do you think about that gap and how it also affects the issue of trust? Because for Nigerians, they would always argue that I want a prepaid meter, I want to be billed and pay for what I use. So that's also been a challenge. Sometimes the meters are not available. What do you think is the solution to this?
You know, I will come back. Everything is about financing, right? And what are you financing the sector with? Are you going to continue to finance the sector with 3,500 megawatts or 4,500 megawatts, right? Because if you look at metering, you provide people meters that cost about 150,000, and then nothing passes through the meter so that even the meter will generate a revenue, or that the meter generates the revenue that pays for that meter, right? So you find out that first, some of the meters are bypassed, and secondly, the financing of the meters from a market point of view is challenging because there is not enough supply passing through that meter. So I believe that meter provides fairness for the consumers, but you also have to make sure that people are not stealing or tampering with the meters. It provides the fairness, and definitely it should be in the mix of things that needs to be fixed about the sector. The point, and for me, is that if you're looking at the government and you're looking at its responsibility, you need to choose what its priorities are, right? The meters should be left to NERC within the market and the discos to figure out the best way with the consumers how to get that done. The government is spending inordinate amount of time and money interfering where they could use that money and their time in trying to sort out the legal landscape for investors and make sure that people understand exactly how they can make major investments. I'm not talking about little mini grids and things like that, but if you're looking for major investments, you have to begin to de-risk the sector. And I think that's where the government needs to focus on. De-risk the sector, do something about transmission and gas, and inflate that. Leave the market issues and a little bit of these things for the regulators, the discos, to manage that.
What sort of support now should we be looking out for moving on? International support and all of that. And where should be the focus when all of this support's coming?
I don't think that international support is Nigeria's problem. We have very strong expertise in the industry. We just need a focused leadership that believes that Nigerians, if there is anything that we've seen in the last 10 years or 12 years of privatization, is that we've grown the capacity, the professional capacity within the country, right? I remember under the last government, we were looking for funds from the World Bank, and the central bank was throwing money into the sector. They spent about $4 or $5 billion even before the World Bank, right? So we don't need what the World Banks and the AFDB they tend to bring. It's a little bit of some form of professionalism and make sure there's a due process. We believe in ourselves. We can do this. So I don't think that foreign support is Nigeria's problem. Nigeria's problem is to look inward and have a leadership that uses the assets that we have, both physical and intellectual, to fix things within the sector.
A lot of work there. So if you were to sum it up, would you say that we've got positives from privatizing Nigeria's power sector? Can we highlight positives from this process?
I mean, like we said, we've grown a workforce that is very intellectual. We're exporting expertise here. There are there is more efficiency in the way things are done. I think that we need leadership, regulatory, and then orientation about the service. But I will not go back to say that we need to go back and cancel the privatization, as most people would say. But where we are now is that private capital will be challenging to bring into the sector. In the short term, the federal government or the government, both federal and subnational, could lead the investment while the risk in the place, and with time, as the landscape, the investment landscape, then private sector will begin to come in, or private capital, will follow suit.
I think it's really a good way to live it. I must thank you so much, Pioneer Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, NBET. He is, at the moment, the CEO, founder, ZKJ Energies Partners Limited. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Nigeria. To enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Have a nice weekend.